Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks, as always, for tuning in today. This is your host, Erin Bradley. And if it's your first time tuning in to the Pursuing Freedom podcast, welcome aboard. I've got a great show in store for you today with a very hot topic that we've been discussing a lot lately inside of my coaching community. And if you're not aware, I host a community called the Pursuing Freedom Collective, which is a growing national referral network of real estate agents, mortgage lenders, investors, primarily experienced, seasoned agents and lenders who are working to fine tune their systems and implement scale so that they can grow beyond their personal capacity. And this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because personally, I spent the first 8 years of my career riding the roller coaster of feast or famine, broke to burnout. When my business would dry up, I would panic and stress out and put my foot on the gas, and inevitably, business would come in the door. And then before long, I found myself running out of energy, running out of time and enthusiasm as the demands of the business started to compromise my ability to be present with my loved ones. And it felt like a trade off. And it was tough because in the beginning, the first time I experienced a quantum leap in my business was back in 2012. And I went from averaging 30 some transactions a year to doing nearly 80 with no systems, no support. Never in a million years did I expect to do that amount of volume. So at first, of course, I was grateful. The money was good. In fact, far more than I ever expected to earn. And I had come from being a teacher. So there was really only one way to go but up. And so I had exceeded the expectations of my former self. And so many of us are guilty of this, and we've experienced it in many areas of our life. If you could go back to your younger self, chances are somewhere in your life, your relationships, your family, your health, business, financial, you have exceeded the expectation of your younger self. And so when that happens, it's an indication of what we are capable of. And at first, I thought I better just suck it up and survive. Like, I'm so lucky and to be making this money, and this is just so great. And it was very exhilarating at first until it wasn't. And it wasn't long before I found myself crumbling on the inside and starting to resist the opportunities I had worked so hard to create for myself. And so my second approach was, let me just shrink my vision, because I remember asking people that were ahead of me in the game, their kids were a little bit older, and I asked them, how are you doing this? If I'm doing 20 million in volume and you're doing 30 million in volume and you don't have an assistant, I don't know how you're surviving. And they all admitted that they just worked really long hours, working till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, never have a day off, never take a vacation. And I remember thinking, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, because if this is what success looks like, I'm more afraid of more in this case than I am of less. And so I decided I'll try to do less. And unfortunately, that didn't really work either, because I believe as human beings, we are here to expand and grow. And the reason we know this to be true is because every time we achieve one milestone, we celebrate temporarily before there's a new desire in its place. And I think this is okay. This is human nature. So instead of resisting that call to grow and expand, I think we just simply have to acknowledge, okay, I see what just happened there. I'm capable of creating abundance in my business, but I don't have limitless time, energy, or enthusiasm. So I've got to find a better way. And the better way isn't to aim for less, because the byproduct of aiming for less is that I got less. In fact, I got a lot less, and I found my pipeline dried up all over again, and I didn't feel relieved. And this is something we talk about all the time. Everybody laughs because we all say to ourselves, when things are really overwhelming, when we find ourselves completely spread thin, overconnected, overcommitted, and overwhelmed, in our brain, and sometimes even to our loved ones, we might say things like, when things slow down, I'm going to come up for air. When things slow down, I am going to take a break. And then what happens when things slow down? None of us exhale. We all panic because we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, did I shoot myself in the foot? And the other issue is that when it slows down, which it inevitably does, not because you're incapable of consistent, predictable, exponential growth, but because the system that you applied to create the growth became compromised when you had to pivot to customer service and reactivity. So we put a lot of effort into creating the momentum that's going to bring the business in the door. The business comes in, and we say to ourselves, phew, I have business. Now let me focus on converting these leads and giving great customer service. And as we have bigger fish to fry with these more high level demands of us as business professionals, we inevitably don't have as much time for some of the other things that we maybe were doing that could look like a myriad of things. It could be we don't have enough time to make those outbound phone calls or to have as many appointments or to do pop buys or to drop letters in the mail or give gifts, So the things that we were doing to create the momentum become executed inconsistently. And that inconsistency leads to the inconsistency in our business. But typically, when this happens, none of us really have the wherewithal to say, oh, I can see there's a pattern here. Instead, we just freak out. I don't know if you're listening, you can relate, but that's what would happen to me. In fact, when things were really busy and I felt overwhelmed, maybe it would cross my mind that I should enlist some help and get an assistant or have better systems. But I'm too busy to even think about how to write a job description, find an assistant, and train them. And so I convinced myself it's better if I just get through it, right? So just get through this busy month, survive my success. And when things slow down, I will think about my business differently and do things a little smarter. But then things slow down, and all it does is affirm the fear. It's like, oh, see, who do I think I am? I can't hire help because my business just slowed down and proved to me that this is inconsistent. And it's just this vicious cycle. And so, as I said at the beginning, I spent 8 years on that roller coaster, and I tried surviving success. I tried shrinking. I almost quit the business because I thought I'm not cut out for this. And then luckily, someone gave me the advice to instead get some help and scale. And sometimes we have to prepare for that success before we're experiencing it. And this is an interesting topic because, especially with newer agents and lenders that I coach, when we start talking about hiring help and having great systems and scaling your business so that you can grow beyond your personal capacity, it's almost like there's a resistance to that concept because people are thinking that sounds like a great problem to have. I can't think about that right now. I need a deal. I need a paycheck. I need some business. And my response to that is yes. But as a business owner, which is what we are, we also want to think beyond the next transaction, or we will find ourselves in the weeds cyclically over and over again. And we're going to wonder, when is the moment where we can create a stronger foundation to do things differently? And in my opinion, it happens in those quieter moments where you envision a life that you've created for yourself, where all of your dreams are coming true. And it's fueled and financed by a business that you've organized to power it, instead of letting the business drain your life, which is what it does when you're on that roller coaster. There's almost no happy medium when you're riding that feast or famine roller coaster. So what I want to cover today is something that we've been talking a lot about inside of the coaching calls, and also something I'm going to be covering in depth in an upcoming free webinar in late April of 2025. And I want to invite you to join me on that free workshop because we're going to get the opportunity to meet and to connect and to answer your questions and even to address the fears that you might be feeling as we're talking about this right now. But chances are, if you're listening this far, it's because you can relate to some aspect of what I'm talking about here. And you may still be sitting there doubting whether you're cut out for hiring help, because someone said it to me this morning, I'm just terrified of committing to that expense. And so we're going to address that fear today, but we're also going to go deeper in the workshop that I'll be presenting the week of April 21st. And so I'll share at the end how you can get registered for that workshop, how we can connect, and how I can support you in that environment. So stay tuned for the end to make sure that you don't miss out on that. So let's cover the 3 steps to get out of your own way and buy yourself a life. Because what I've heard people talk about in my journey is that in the beginning, yes, you have to trade hours for dollars. You do. You've got to learn and apply what you're learning and push through your comfort zone and trade your hours in exchange for dollars. Inevitably, the dollars are going to start to come in. And at that point, you want to have a plan in place for when it happens. Because if you're sitting here thinking, if I can get a deal, we need to address that before we can go any further. If you're in this business to create a life for yourself that's powered by this business and fuels your dreams, you've got to know right now, before you go one step further, that you're cut out for this, that you believe in your ability to be successful. Because when I was at my financial rock bottom the first time in 2008, I asked my dad for advice and he said, Erin, do you think you're going to be good at this someday? And I sat with it for a minute and I responded, yes, I do. I really do think I could be good at this someday. And so before we go any further, that's a question I have for you right now. Do you think you're going to be good at this someday? And if you've been at it long enough, you already know you're good enough and that relationships and skills and experience are not actually your bottleneck. It's not even the market or the interest rates. It's actually the energy, the enthusiasm, and the time factor. And that's what we want to address and how we can create a plan to get you in the driver's seat of a business that fuels a life that you've only dreamed of. So the 3 steps we're going to cover are number 1, the energy audit. Number 2, making a plan and building a runway. And number 3, how to hire the right kind of people so that you can learn to trust and let go and see your business grow as a byproduct. So step 1 is the energy audit. Now, I had a coach give me this assignment way back in 2015 when I was first learning how to fine tune and scale my business. And he said, the first thing I want you to acknowledge is that you can't keep adding to your plate. You cannot do more. In fact, you need to do less, way less, which is a scary thing to think about because it always seems like the to-do list never ends and there's not enough hours in the day. And so he said, look, here's what I want you to do. Write down everything that you've said yes to in the past 2 weeks. So every box that you've checked, every appointment, personal and professional, doing the laundry, emptying the dishwasher, running the kids around, every single thing you do from the moment you wake up in the morning till the moment you fall asleep. And the other thing is make a list of everything you would do if you had more time. And this is a big one because we all know that there are great ideas that never make it to the finish line because we simply didn't have enough time. And the problem with that is that if energy and enthusiasm is the real cause of our bottleneck and we add to it the judgment of ourselves for not getting around to all the things we could do or intend to do, and we start beating ourselves up for not getting that thing done, we're actually further diminishing our energy. It's like energy draining in the process of simply criticizing ourselves for not being good enough, when in fact, all we need is a better system and someone to help us run it. So I also learned this from an incredible book called Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt, which I've read many times as I've recalibrated over the years, which I recommend you do as well, because your business doesn't look the same year after year. And that's why if it has been trying to look the same, you find yourself stagnated and bored or maybe a little burned out. We need to be constantly evaluating what is it that energizes us, what drains us, and then how can we organize around that truth. And so there's an incredible process in the book Free to Focus, which is just a great way to do a deep dive on this strategy. And in it, what I learned was I was spending 80% of my time in energy draining activities, most of which could be done by somebody else. And the energizing activities that actually move the needle and could open the portal to that next quantum leap in my business or my life, I simply didn't have enough time for because I was so busy doing all this small work that was keeping me drained and burned out and bored. And so we started to evaluate. So that's the first step. And what was really interesting and also kind of funny, something that I share in a lot of my workshops, which you'll see if you join me the week of April 21st, is that when I did this activity, I made a list of all the things I intended to do or was doing or wasn't doing. And on that list were things like making 5 phone calls a day to my database, doing 2 handwritten notes a day, a monthly mailer, follow-up calls and notes to past clients, daily social media posting, quarterly client appreciation events, holiday mailers every single month, dropping by gifts, dropping by cupcakes, birthday cards, anniversary cards, etc. Now, before I go one step further, I want you to ask yourself, are you doing all of those things with 100% consistency? Day in and day out, 12 months a year? And since the answer is likely no, and you might be laughing to yourself, then the next question is, if all of those things were happening with 100% consistency, your database was getting regular mailers, holiday things, phone calls, seeing you on social media, seeing you in person every quarter at client appreciation events, on and on it goes. Do you think that would create momentum in your business? Do you think you might have at least one more closing a month? Okay. If the answer is yes, just keep that in the back of your mind and ask yourself, is the industry inconsistent or are we inconsistent as people? I would wager it's the latter. So then he had me make a list of everything I was doing. And I made a list and it was like check emails, social media rabbit hole, return calls, check emails and texts, have coffee with a friend, check more emails and texts, meeting with a client, check emails, text, make one outbound phone call, listing appointment, return calls, emails, text, social media, right? And when I share this, most people giggle because they're thinking to themselves, yep, guilty. So the first thing we have to do is this audit in order to get clarity around where we are spending our time and whether or not it's productive and moving the needle towards our goal, and whether or not the things we're saying yes to knowingly or unknowingly are energizing or energy draining. And then start to evaluate, could any of these things be done by somebody else? Because on that list, and some people might argue me on this, but I would say 100% of those things could be handled by somebody else apart from me showing up to the client appreciation event. The mailers, the notes, the social media, all the things. Maybe I'm the only person who can make the video, but I can have somebody else post it and write the copy and do the hashtags. And you might even think I can't delegate phone calls. But what I would say to you is when I did this process and realized I was probably 20% consistent with my phone calls, it became apparent that 80% of my clients were getting nothing from me. Now ask yourself, have you ever had a past client that went with a different realtor or lender the next time around? And how good were you at keeping in touch in the interim? And what would happen if someone on your team made those calls to keep in touch, to let them know we're thinking of you and happy anniversary, and your realtor wants to know if you need any referrals for any service providers. You think about the front desk at your doctor's office or dentist office. They are hugely impactful in patient retention because they call to make sure that you schedule that next appointment. They make sure that you pay your bills. They check you in at the front desk. They do a great job. And because they do a great job, you remain a patient of that doctor. It's the same thing if you want to think about yourself running a business like a true professional, is that sometimes we might need some help in client retention, in client follow-up, in follow through, and that it doesn't actually need to be you. It does need to get done because if it's not getting done, someone else out there is doing it. Someone else out there is calling your client. And there's a reason why when we did an experiment in 2019, we noticed that 50% of our repeat clients were working with a different real estate agent. And that was a painful statistic to accept and swallow. And so that became the turning point where we realized you can never lose touch with your past clients because that is the opportunity for you to continue to grow and attract referral business for a lifetime and not feel like you're constantly starting from zero. So that's a whole nother topic for another day. But step 2 is make a plan and build a runway. So once you've done your audit, you now have a list of things that could start to resemble a job description of responsibilities that somebody else could handle. And so we map it all out. And in one of a talk I did recently, I was challenging the audience to think about your business and ask yourself, would you take a job working as an employee for a company where the manager, the boss, does not give you a game plan? They don't tell you what time to come to work or what to do when you're here and then show you how to do it. They just wing it every day. We'll figure it out. We'll see what we feel like. I wasn't in the mood today. I could do this. I could do that. Maybe we'll do this. You would not trust the person hiring you if they didn't say, okay, come to work at this time on these days. You're going to do these activities at first. We're going to train you on how to do it. And then once you achieve mastery, hopefully you're going to get a promotion and then your responsibilities will change and grow. And then we will replace you with that entry level person. And assuming you come to work on time and doing what's expected of you, you're going to get paid X amount of dollars. And then you think about, we use the analogy of the truck driver. Does the truck driver wake up in the morning and think, where should I go today? Where could I go today? No, because they have a destination and they have a roadmap. So then ask yourself, how do you run your business? If somebody came to you and said, tell me your system for success, would you be able to rattle it off and say, I do this on Mondays, this on Tuesdays, this on Wednesdays, etc. And during these hours, on these days, I do these activities. And on these days, I create space for these activities. Like, could you rattle off your business plan? Because if you can't, then you're winging it. And likely you are going to be on that cycle of feast or famine indefinitely until you are willing to slow down and evaluate and create a plan. And there was an amazing guy named Long Doan on my podcast. Gosh, he was on my podcast in 2019, I believe, and again in 2020. And he talked a lot about this idea that systems run businesses and people run systems. So before you can hire somebody, you got to get that system out of your head. And most of it, it's interesting because it's like in an ideal world, this is how I would run my business. And some of us don't even give ourselves permission to daydream the creative process of what it could look like because we are blocked by the inability to add anything to our mental plate because we are maxed out on time, energy, and enthusiasm. So we might have a great idea. We might even go to a conference and think that's brilliant. I wish I could do that, but, and then you fill in the blanks. I can't because I don't have enough time for that. I wish I could, but. So what I'm saying here is there is a huge delta of what could be happening in your business if you had the plan in place and you had somebody to run it for you. And I get it. It's scary because if you've been riding that roller coaster of feast or famine, of course, your number one fear is going to be, what if I hire somebody and the business dries up? Well, this is why this part of the second step in this process is to build a runway. So all I want you to do is evaluate, what would it look like to start small? If I hired somebody part-time, or maybe if I hired someone on a commission basis where they would get a certain fixed dollar amount per closing. If you're a real estate agent who hires a transaction coordinator, a lot of the time they have a fixed per closing fee, right? So they only get paid if it closes, and it's $350 or it's $500. Alternatively, you can pay someone a percentage of your commission. And that's how I did it the first time, because I was also afraid to add a line item to my expenses without having the revenue to cover it. So I just decided to offer commission-based at first. And as a result of bringing on a commission-based team member, the business more than doubled. In fact, it went from 2 closings in August to 12 closings in December. So we 6 times our volume in 4 months. Now, all that to say, my number one fear did come true. Before we saw that exponential growth, we had to onboard, we had to train. And that meant that we had to slow down. And so my number one fear did come true. And my business had slowed down significantly from when I hired her in June to when we had the 2 closings in August. Now, 2 closings a month, you might be thinking, I don't need an assistant. And you're right, you don't need an assistant for 2 closings a month. But you can't get to 12 closings a month without getting out of your own way. And that's why I named this episode 3 Steps to Get Out of Your Way and Buy Yourself a Life. So we did have to slow down in order to speed up. And I did panic a little bit, but since I was paying her commission, it wasn't like money was going out the door. Now, depending on how you do it, the third option is you can start with a part-time assistant, and maybe you can budget, let's say $1,500 a month for that, or whatever you can afford. Like, what can you afford? Can you afford $300 a month? Whatever that dollar amount is, if you're going to do it that way, then start planning for it and building that runway. And you don't have to build up 12 months of reserves, because you're going to know very quickly, typically within a couple weeks, you can tell if you've hired a rock star. And rock stars will grow your business and will never cost you anything. In fact, they make your life easier, they make your business better, they make your client experience better because they're rock stars. And we always use the dentist office analogy because the dentist office wouldn't run without the person at the front desk doing all the important things that they do. So they're not insignificant. They're extremely valuable to the organization. Same with the hygienist. You get taken back to your seat and the hygienist greets you, and they know your family. They know, what you've been up to. They small talk with you. They're friendly. They take good care of you. And then the dentist shows up to evaluate and diagnose and potentially prescribe a treatment, right? If the hygienist wasn't amazing, you probably wouldn't love that dentist office because the hygienist plays such a big part. So we don't want to undermine the idea of having team, right? Of having a great system, a well-oiled machine, and amazing people to run it. And those rock stars are out there. And we need to debunk the myth that they don't exist, because they do. And you probably were one of those eager beaver rock stars at some point in your early years of your life before you became the future leader that you are now becoming. And so we want to find those diamonds in the rough. We need to know that they exist in order to find them and then build that runway, because 90 days of consistent activity is all it takes for you to get results. And so once you've onboarded that team member and they start executing with all the things I mentioned on that list, you're going to start to see your lead flow increasing seemingly overnight. Like within a first few weeks, you're going to start to see more leads coming in as you've got more visibility, more engagement, more impact, more love, more appreciation going out to your database, your marketplace, your community. So what I would suggest is, if you're going to set aside $1,500 a month, for example, for a part-time assistant, then set aside $4,500. So likely a fraction of one closing commission. Put that in your Runway account and call it your freedom account or your buy yourself a life account, because you've got enough in there to trial this person out for 90 days. And usually you'll see your income increase very quickly. And before long, you're gonna be able to afford to have that person more than part-time. And you can always add in a per file bonus that's a fixed amount to help you with your budgeting. So there's a lot of ways to go about this. And I just want to address that because that's a huge fear that a lot of people have, is I can't afford it, or they want to wait till they can afford it. And the problem with waiting until you can afford it is, if you wait until you have 5 under contract, 10 under contract, you're so overwhelmed with your hair on fire, you cannot slow down to prioritize the process of doing this right. All right. So I would actually encourage you to do it when things are in a quiet moment, and to start to really reflect on, why did you become self-employed? Because if you became self-employed for freedom and flexibility, you simply will not ever have it by running this race alone. You can't be in it for the long haul, and not run out of steam from time to time, and not experience the cycles of highs and lows. And as you experience those cycles of highs and lows, it continues to affirm the fear. But I've lived through this myself, because by the time I left my mortgage career and we were doing about 75 million in volume, I looked back and remembered that it was 18 million that broke me. 18 million was the point at which I kept on running out of steam, burning out, and questioning everything, trying to shrink, trying to survive, and then finally learning to scale. And I only share that because I would never have even wanted to do 75 million in volume the way I was doing business to get me to 18 million and to burnout. And that's all I want to say, is that what got you to where you are isn't going to get you where you're trying to go. And you might still be thinking, I don't want to hire help, and that's fine. But what I've seen with a lot of people in my community is they've been selling real estate or doing loans for 10 years or even 20 or 30 years. And they've been doing it all alone for so long, and they wonder why they lack enthusiasm. And we cannot underestimate this, because when we don't feel in the mood to engage with our community and our database, our business will slow down. Or when our business is booming and we're resenting every time there's an alert on our phone or it rings, that's a disservice to our clients, because we're here resenting the very opportunities that we worked so hard to attract. And so, as we think about this roller coaster that many of us ride for far too long, and we tell ourselves, it's fine, it's better if I do it myself, I don't want to take any chances, I don't want to hire somebody, I think we're living an illusion that we're doing our very best. So, this brings me to the last piece, and another huge fear that people often experience in this journey towards getting out of your way and buying yourself a life. And that is, how do I hire? How do I find talent? Or maybe you've even tried it before and it didn't work out. And so the first thing I want to say to that is, in my experience, the most successful hires were the ones where we hired to the values and then train on the skills. Because I've hired experienced people. This is not to say you cannot hire experienced people, but what I found was, to be skilled in certain things, but to lack the values of the team and the culture and the brand that you've created. And this is the biggest fear that most of us face, is that we are so worried that we've worked so hard to get to this point that someone's going to come and mess it up. I hear this all the time. I'm afraid to hire somebody and have them drop the ball. And this comes back to this illusion that we're doing our very best when we're trying to do it all the time. Nobody can do all the things all the time with all the enthusiasm and all the energy and not run out of steam or run out of time or start to resist the overwhelm and the overconnected and the overcommitted aspect of this business. And so all that to say is that if you've been on that roller coaster for a while and you've experienced burnout, then the illusion is that I'm not already dropping the ball. Because in those moments of overwhelm, there's no way I'm also getting all the birthday cards done and the anniversary cards and doing pop-bys and dropping cupcakes by people's houses and getting the events done. Like something is going to fall to the wayside. And by the way, a lot of the time, it's the relationships in my personal life that suffer. So we need to address this and say to ourselves, is this what we were seeking when we started? Coming back to why did you become self-employed? You wanted freedom and flexibility. Well, you don't feel free when you're panicked about not having enough money coming in the door. And you don't feel free when you're tethered to your phone from morning till night, working 24/7, 365 days a year. So let's get off of this idea that we're better off without better systems and scale, because the freedom lies in the systems and scale. So the first thing I would do is start to really list out, how do people describe you? How do they describe working with you? What's important to you? One of the mottos for our team was the Maya Angelou quote that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So how we made people feel, how we listened, how we responded, followed up with handwritten notes and gifts and all these things, that was our brand. And so when I could hire people that were already inherently conscientious, hardworking, thoughtful, and willing to go above and beyond, and that was part of their DNA, we could train to the responsibilities of the job. And heck, I also think to myself, if I could learn how to do this business, anybody can, because I'm definitely not special. And if I'm honest, the only reason I became great at certain aspects of the business, even though they weren't really my zone of genius and they weren't really energizing activities for me, is because I cared. Because I cared about how I made people feel, because I was hardworking and conscientious, and I was willing to go above and beyond to the extent of completely running out of steam and crumbling on the inside and becoming a shell of myself personally and professionally. And so learning how to identify those values in people is key. And I really feel like those types of attributes, they shine very quickly when you've hired somebody, because those rock stars, they'll often come to you and say, give me more, or, you know, if you want to show me how to do that, I want to help you. And they really want to help you. And so from there, we just need to be willing to train them. And this is another fear, is that people feel they don't have the time to train. So it's better off if I do it myself. But again, I really want to challenge that. We are not better off doing it ourselves, especially if we've been at it long enough to know that it's time for us to take that promotion and to step into leadership and to step into mastery. And it's time for us to pass the baton and create an opportunity for somebody else to step into this incredible industry that can change lives. And truly, that's what it ended up doing, is that this business can change lives and it can also drain lives. And the question is, are you letting it change your life? Are you willing to take the wheel and design a business that can change your life and help you achieve all the dreams you have for yourself, and then pass that baton to others? Create an opportunity for people to join your small but mighty organization and create a home in a chaotic industry for other people to thrive. There's another narrative to this process, and it's that it can be really, really fun and really fulfilling. Of course, it has its challenges, but so does being a solopreneur. So the last thing I want to say is let go to grow. Let go to grow. So hire to the values, give them the proper amount of training and attention, and then let go. And this is another one, is that people will say, well, what if they drop the ball? What if they make a mistake? And my response to that is, how did you learn? How did you learn in your business to never make that mistake again? Chances are because you made that mistake. Okay, we don't come through this journey unscathed, and we can't protect every single detail and expect perfection. And we're not perfect either. We've already dropped the ball. And so sometimes we have to let small bad things happen to create space for extraordinary growth to occur. And I promise you, it was more interesting and more fun at the peak of my career when we had great systems, an incredible team, an incredible culture. And the feedback from the clients was that they loved our team. And I want you to come back to that dentist office analogy. If you love your dentist office, chances are you love all of the people in the office, not just the dentist. And if any one individual on that team was less than awesome, it may challenge your decision to continue to go there. But collectively, we bring together different gifts, similar values, and when we bring those gifts together, we create a superhuman because each individual can contribute at the highest level in their zone of genius, which complements my shortcomings, okay, and your shortcomings. And we put you in that zone of genius where you're having fun, you're doing what you're great at, you're learning, you're growing, you're enjoying the work, and you're continually seeking that next level for yourself as you surround yourself with people that can take over the things you're ready to graduate from. In my journey, what I found is that it never actually cost me to hire people. It will not cost you to hire somebody. So instead of thinking, what's this going to cost me and what are they going to do for me? I want you to think about what you can do for others. So apply the go giver philosophy to your team members the same way you would apply that philosophy to your clients. Are you willing to go above and beyond for your clients? Then go above and beyond for your team members, and they will go above and beyond for your clients. And you can create a larger, wider ripple effect where you can simply reach the hearts and minds of more people. And that allowed me to have more ideas that I didn't suffocate with my fear of not having enough time. So with each new idea, I could look around to my team and say, is somebody willing to help me with this? Can you execute on this idea? Can you send that person flowers? Can you drop a gift off at their office? Can you get the closing gift? Can you organize the client appreciation event? So all of a sudden, this ripple effect just went further and wider than I could ever possibly do by myself because I was so bottlenecked and I was so suffocated by the roller coaster. So I'll leave you with this. It'll never cost you to hire somebody, but it might be costing you not to. All right. What I mean by that is coming back to the analogy, you start with someone part-time, $1,500 a month, $4,500 for 90 days. If that gets you one more closing and one more closing is $10,000, it didn't cost you $4,500 to take 3 months to onboard this person, to fine tune your systems and to create more impact, more visibility, and more reach to your community. It's costing you $5,500 not to. And let's take it a little bit further. Let's say it's costing me $35,000 a year to have a full-time assistant, entry level, that later I can start to bonus out of commissions. And let's say that brings in another $100,000 in revenue. It didn't cost me $35,000 not to. It cost me $65,000. It cost me $65,000 not to hire that person. You get the idea. The point is, you can keep hitting your head against the ceiling of your personal capacity, running out of steam, watching your pipeline dry up, feeling frustrated, and then out of energy, even though you know exactly what to do to turn that faucet on again, but maybe you don't feel like it. Or you can reimagine the future of your business and understand that there's a limit to your personal capacity and that the only way out and through and beyond is with the help of others. So if you want to workshop this with me, hop over to pursuingfreedom.com/April. If you're listening to this after the recording, we will make sure to have a replay available to you. But I would encourage you, if you hear this before we go live, there's 3 different date time options to choose from the week of April 21st, 2025. So hop over to pursuingfreedom.com/April and register for one of those events and try to attend live because it'll give us the opportunity to answer your questions, to address your fears. I'm suspecting, if you're still listening, that some of the things we've spoken about here today are speaking to your very fears. And my job is to help you acknowledge that fear is just believing in an imaginary future outcome. And I've been on that side of fear, and I stayed on that side of fear for far too long. And then I finally got the coaching and the support and the community to help me rewire those beliefs and switch from fear to faith and take action anyway. And I'm here to tell you I'm living proof that the freedom is on the other side of systems and scale. And so don't keep going it alone. And at a minimum, join me on that live webinar because we're going to dig into some other topics that you can take and start to apply, even if in the smallest scale possible. But at a minimum, I just want to help expand the belief system that you too have it within you, and that if I could do it, so can you. And if anyone in my community can do it, can push through that fear and take that action and see their business and their life expand, when the ROI of energy alone is worth it. Like, forget about the financial ROI, the ROI of energy, of enthusiasm, of feeling alive again as you watch all these tasks and responsibilities that you used to do that you no longer enjoy doing and that you didn't have time for anyway are now getting done. And your clients are feeling more seen and loved and appreciated, and you're getting more referrals. It is so energizing. It is so fun as you create opportunities for those within your team, within your community, for your referral partners, and everyone beyond. And that ripple effect is what we're all about. So join me the week of April 21st. You can register at pursuingfreedom.com/April. And if you have any questions about this episode, shoot me a DM at Pursuing Freedom Official on Instagram, or message me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me, because we put this content out there so that you don't just get inspired, but you take action and you see your lives changed as mine has changed, thanks to all of the coaches and communities I've invested in over the years. I didn't believe it was true. Now I know it is, and I want you to know it too. So thanks for listening so far. I love you. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.